Chapter 1373. All right. Gooden nodded. He was trying to distract Woody and kill him in one move, but he didn't expect Woody to give him the chance. Gooden was overjoyed. Woody laughed and patted his chest. He stood in the courtyard and said, "Hit me, I will let you hit me. Let's see if you can kill me. Ignorant brat, have you heard of the golden shield?" "No." Gooden said honestly, "I don't know what you're talking about, but it sounds really strong. I should be able to kill you." Gooden's words drew a wave of laughter from everyone present, especially Zhen Yingjun and Qibing. Zhen Yingjun wasn't from a noble house and he didn't have the rules of a noble house, so he didn't care. Qibing, on the other hand, was from a hidden noble house, so he didn't care either. The Shao family brothers, on the other hand, didn't dare laugh too much since Zhishan and Qibing were there. Zhishan, on the other hand, was an introverted man. He came here to support Woody, but he wasn't the type to show his emotions on his face. Plus, he knew that the two masters from House Pai weren't top-level masters, but they were killed so easily by Lin Yi's men. This meant that Uncle Pai's death wasn't a coincidence. Even if Go Huli didn't hit him, he wouldn't be able to live for long. If Lin Yi and Gooden were this strong, then where did these two come from? Could they really be from some ancient sect or ancient house? Even someone like Zhishan hadn't heard of these two before. These two couldn't have come out of nowhere, could they? Hence, before Pai Zhishan could confirm this point, he would not show his attitude. If even Woody wasn't a match for them, then he'd have to go back to House Pai and plan things out. If these two really came from the ancient world, then House Pai would be in trouble. In the eyes of the ancient sects and families, the hidden aristocratic families weren't much. They were experts at the peak of the late phase of the heaven realm. "Fine, then I'll let you hit me. If you can't kill me, I'll destroy your entire family." Woody looked at Gooden mockingly. He really didn't know fear, didn't he? He didn't even know about the golden shield and he dared to attack. Not far from the Chu family's villa, a black figure was anxiously making a phone call. "Elderly, I am Shadow 13. Woody has come down the mountain, but I have been here for a few days and haven't seen Lin Yi. He seems to have gone out and only sent one of his brothers to protect the little Mississippi. Now Woody has come and said that he wants to capture the little miss." The Black Shadow's voice was a little rushed. "What? How is Woody so fast?" Elderly was visibly shocked. He hadn't expected Woody to come down the mountain in just a day. Originally, he wanted to inform Lin Yi through the Dark Shadow group to make preparations or to lie low for a while, but he didn't expect that the other party wouldn't give him any time at all. "What do we do now?" Dark Shadow requesting backup. Shadow 13 said, "Both sides are at each other's throats, but from what Woody said, the little miss will be fine for now, but that Zhen Yingjun wants to take her away. If we have time, we can save her." Elder Li's heart was burning with anxiety, but there was nothing he could do. These years, his control over the Dark Palace was getting weaker and weaker. All the power was concentrated in the hands of the Great Elder, and he could only control the Dark Shadow group. But the Dark Shadow group's cultivation was the kind of qinggong that was used for hiding and gathering information, not for attacking. Other than the Dark Shadow group, however, he couldn't use anyone else. "I'll report to the Grand Elder right now," Elderly said. "Keep an eye on the situation. Report to me immediately if there's any news." "Sir." Shadow 13 replied. After hanging up the phone, Elderly hurriedly ran to the Grand Elder's residence. "Elderly, what's wrong?" The Grand Elder glanced at Elderly, who ran in anxiously, frowned slightly and asked indifferently, "You're already an adult, why are you so anxious?" "Grand Elder, the little miss is in danger, I'm requesting backup." Elderly was an elder of the Dark Palace, and naturally he was allowed to enter the Grand Elder's residence. However, the Grand Elder was a bit impatient with him and every time he came it was always about Meng Yao. "Danger? What does it have to do with you? What does it have to do with the Dark Palace?" The Grand Elder asked back. "Grand Elder, that is Mrs. Bloodline after all. She might also have the bloodline of the Dark Phoenix clan. She might be the next palace master of our palace." Elderly said, "Someone with the bloodline of the Dark Phoenix clan has the highest chance of breaking through to sky rank." "Back then, old madam, all right. You've said this 100 times already. How could an immortal have the Dark Phoenix bloodline? It's all impurities and it'll be hard for her to achieve anything on the path of martial arts. Do you want me to give her a bone-cleansing pill?" The Grand Elder waved his hand impatiently. "If you can get me a bone-cleansing pill, I'll agree to bring that little bastard back." Elderly couldn't help but smile bitterly after hearing the Grand Elder's words. Bone cleansing pill was such a powerful medicine. There was only one in the Sky Elixir sect's vault. How could they give it to him? Even if there wasn't a grudge between the Sky Elixir sect and the Dark Palace, even if the Sky Elixir sect's young master had married Wanner back then, he wouldn't have used the bone cleansing pill on a child. One had to know that the true use of the bone cleansing pill was for those who reached Sky class, to pursue higher realms. Saying that it was priceless was an understatement. The Grand Elder's words were tantamount to blocking Elder Lee's following words. Chapter 1374. I will take my leave. Elder Lee let out a long sigh and walked out of the Grand Elder's residence dejectedly. In his heart he was hesitating whether he should tell young Miss about this matter. But if he were to tell young Miss would definitely be heartbroken and might do something. But if he were to not tell, once young Miss knew the truth, she would definitely hate him in her heart. At that moment Elder Lee was in a dilemma, not knowing what to do. Lin Yi, you're not a good bodyguard at all, leaving at a time like this. If something really happens to Miss Xiao Xiao, I won't let you go. Elder Lee gritted his teeth and thought to himself, the day of the Heaven class meeting is getting closer and closer. When the Great Elder isn't in the Palace of Darkness, I'll go down the mountain and kill every single one of you. House Yu Xiao family, Golden Clock sect, Hidden House Pai, Hidden House Xiao, I'll bring my men and kill every single one of you. At the entrance of House Chu's villa, the tension continued. Then I'll do it? Gooden looked at Jean Wudi, who stood in front of him with his chest puffed out. Go ahead. Wudi stood proudly in the yard, his eyes full of disdain. Even those famous masters from the hidden houses wouldn't dare say they could kill him with one punch, let alone an ignorant kid like you. Ask them if they could even injure him with one punch. They wouldn't even break a bone in his body. Gooden nodded and gritted his teeth, channeling his energy, and punched out. Ping. There was a loud explosion and Jean Wudi disappeared. Where did he go? Gooden paused. Zhen Ningjun suddenly burst into laughter. Old ancestor Wudi dodged it. Look at your idiot face. But did Jean Wudi really dodge it? Gooden felt that he'd definitely hit the target and he'd used all his strength to do it. He didn't know how strong an Earth class was, but just looking at these people's faces he knew that they were strong. In order to kill this person, Gooden had to use all his strength to do that punch. The goal was to kill Jean Wudi with one punch, to prevent any future problems. Luckily he didn't need to sneak attack. Jean Wudi gave him a chance to go all out. After that punch, Gooden felt the blood in his body surge, and the poison in his body couldn't be suppressed anymore. It was starting to move. Gooden had a limit to how much strength he could use, and this time he was at the edge of his limit. But Gooden was an honest guy, but he wasn't stupid. He couldn't do anything inappropriate right now or Meng Yao and Yushi would be in danger. He wouldn't be able to complete the mission his boss gave him. Gooden was starting to regret it. He should have killed Pai Yongyong and Mr. Pai with one punch the first time he saw them. He didn't waste so much energy and end up fighting them a second time. Only the idiot Zhen Ningjun thought that Jean Wudi had dodged it. Pai Jishan's expression was ugly. Jean Wudi's dead. Qintian suddenly pointed at the wall outside the villa excitedly. Everyone followed Qintian's gaze and saw that Jean Wudi's entire body had sunk into the opposite wall of the villa. His chest was caved in, his eyes were bulging out, and his mouth was full of blood. Evidently he wasn't going to make it. Gooden breathed in relief. It was good that he was dead. He didn't think that his punch would be so strong that he'd sent Wudi flying across the street. No wonder he was looking for him. What? Qibin paused. He's dead. Jishan took a deep breath and walked towards Gooden. What are you doing? Do you want to die too? Gooden said fiercely. He couldn't do it again. Hero Godan, you've misunderstood. Pai Jishan stopped in his tracks, not daring to walk any further. This guy looked like a simple-minded person, but he could easily kill someone with a single punch. Pai Jishan didn't dare to do anything rash. If he was killed by this guy again, it would be a huge loss. What misunderstanding? Gooden asked. There seems to be some misunderstanding between you and House Pai. I'm the young master of House Pai Jishan. I apologize on behalf of the two Pais. We House Pai have no intention of becoming enemies with you and your boss Lin Yi. We hope you don't mind, Master Gooden. Jishan was a man who knew when to give and when to stand up. He was the proud first successor of House Pai, and it was hard for him to say something like this. But he had to lower his head when he was under someone else's roof. Shishan understood the situation. This Gooden was too strong. He could kill someone like Jin Wudi with his golden shield in one punch. Wouldn't that be like a game to him? Even his father, Pai Jiaka, couldn't do anything to Jin Wudi, so if this guy were to beat his father, it'd be a piece of cake. Oh, I killed those two already and they learned their lesson. I won't cause you any trouble. If there's nothing else, you can leave. Gooden said it like it was nothing, but he was panicking on the inside. He forced himself not to spit out a mouthful of blood, feeling really uncomfortable. If that's the case, then I'll be leaving. We owe you a favor, Master Gooden. If you need anything in the future, just let us know. Shishan knew that Gooden didn't want to talk to him, so he cupped his fist and gestured to the Shao family brothers before leaving with them. Wang Ba and Wang Dao, on the other hand, were regretting their mouths. If they knew that Qintian's boss was this strong, they wouldn't have said anything. If they had medicine for regret, Shao family would have joined Lin Yi. Look, House Wu's glory days were just around the corner. Jin Dazhou and Jin Yingjun were dumbfounded as well. He died just like that? Fuck, what kind of terrifying existence was this family? Last time Maju was heavily injured, but at least he survived. This time he didn't even get to say a few words and he was killed. The two looked at each other, seeing the fear in each other's eyes. Last time when Maju was injured, the father and son still had the intention of revenge in their hearts. But now they knew that revenge had become a joke. An Earth-class master could be killed with one punch. Then in the eyes of others, what difference was there between them and ants? Chapter 1375. With that thought, the two wanted to slip away, but Yushu stopped them. Hey, wait, didn't you want to play with us? Jin Yingjun stumbled, almost falling. Play with his head. He might not be a man or a woman right now, but he wasn't dead yet. If he played with her, then he'd really be dead. So he quickly smiled and said, "Ha, Sister Shu, I was just joking. You can be played by your shield, bro. I'm leaving now." Bye, that's more like it, scram. Yushu was very happy after hearing that and let him go for now. Jin Dazhou and Jin Yingjun turned and left as if they were pardoned. Only Zhao Qibing was left in the wheelchair. Hey Zhao Qibing, did you see that? Prophet Shu is so strong, arrogant people get punished. Look, Jin Wudi's dead, right? Yushu looked at Qibing. I'm sorry, we're just passing by, we're actually here to buy some soy sauce. Sihua, who was pushing Qibing's wheelchair, was the first to react. He grinned and said innocently, "We're just here to watch the show, we'll be leaving now." "Yeah, we're here to watch." Qibing quickly said, annoyed. He shouldn't have come if he'd known. What the hell was this, Jin Wudi? Invincible? Invincible my ass. Qibing left as well and Gooden's calm face turned an unhealthy shade of red. Peeved, he spat out a mouthful of blood and held his chest. He hadn't felt this in years, ever since the first time he felt this pain. He'd been drinking the mystical spring water ever since, but now that he didn't have any, he could only endure it. Boss, what's wrong? Qintian was calling someone to get rid of Jin Wudi's body. This wasn't a problem for a noble like him, but he saw Gooden spitting out blood. Shao, what's wrong? Yushu jumped up. Are you hurt? Zhou Jiaming, are you okay? I'll call Faubert and get him to send you to the hospital? Mengyao asked. No need. Gooden waved his hand. He knew his situation and going to the hospital wouldn't help much. Qintian quickly held him up. Boss, I'll help you in. Gooden nodded, thinking that Qintian was a nice guy. He wanted to take him in as a follower. After entering the villa, Gooden sat on the sofa with an ugly expression on his face, as if he was about to die from a disease. Boss, what do we do now? House Wu isn't as rich as you, but we do have some good medicine. Should I get someone to send you some? Qintian asked. No need. Thank you. Gooden looked at Qintian and sighed. I'm injured, so I need to rest for a while. Boss Lin Yi isn't back yet, so can you stay in the villa and protect Mengyao and Yushu? He had no choice but to give Qintian the task of protecting Mengyao and Yushu. He didn't know what Qintian was like, but he didn't have a choice. He'd let Faubert stay at night, and with Faubert there, Qintian wouldn't be able to do anything. Deal. Gooden didn't know what Qintian's personality was like, but it was a last resort. Chapter 1376. Phew. But no matter what, this matter has passed peacefully. Little Miss is fine and I can rest assured. Pay close attention to the follow-up news and report to me at any time. Elderly finally let out a sigh of relief in his heart. It seemed like Lin Yi had arranged everything perfectly and he'd worried for nothing. He was an elder of the Dark Palace, and he wasn't even as good as that little bodyguard of Lin Yi. Yes. Shadow 13 replied, don't worry, elderly, but we, the Dark Shadow Group, can only gather information. We can't deal with sudden incidents. This Shadow 13 was one of elderly's confidants, so he didn't have to worry too much about what he said. But I'll have to fight with the Grand Elder again, but you've brought good news this time. It seems like this Lin Yi's background is strong enough. Elderly exclaimed, if he really is that strong, then I'm sure the Grand Elder won't stop us. Shadow 13 didn't dare say much about the internal affairs of the Dark Palace, and hung up after listening quietly. Elderly, on the other hand, headed to the Grand Elder's residence. Why are you here again? Seeing that Elderly had returned, the Grand Elder was immediately a little annoyed. Why was there no end to this person? His face was a little cold. Grand Elder, I have something important to report. Elderly said quickly. If it's about that little bitch Mengyao, then don't bother, I'm going to train. The Grand Elder interrupted impatiently. This matter concerns the little miss, but... Elderly was a little hesitant. The Grand Elder's words had blocked all the words he wanted to say. But what? Whether she lives or dies has nothing to do with me. The Grand Elder waved his hand, ready to chase him away. Grand Elder, let me finish. It's like this that Jean Wudi was killed. Elderly saw that the Grand Elder wasn't giving him any leeway and he could only continue. The one who killed Jean Wudi was Lin Yi's follower. What do you want to tell me? Is Lin Yi's little brother very powerful? The Grand Elder frowned. What's so strange about killing an Earth-class master? Can't we kill each other? Elder on the stage, little Mrs. Bodyguard isn't weak. A bodyguard's underling can kill an Earth stage master with a casual punch. What kind of strength does this underling need? According to my investigation, Lin Yi is only at the mystic stage. Why is this little brother willing to be the little brother of a mystic stage master? Elderly analyzed, this Lin Yi, I'm afraid he has a certain power behind him. Maybe he's the young master of some family or sect. At the level of the ancient sects and ancient families, do you think I don't know what kind of disciples there are? Do I need you to analyze it? The Grand Elder humphed coldly. Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. You're just saying that to make me think that Lin Yi has a powerful background and for us to rope him in. But as far as I'm concerned, that Lin Yi is just a freelancer. His strength isn't enough to enter the eyes of the Dark Palace. Elderly was a bit awkward, that was what he was thinking, but the Grand Elder had seen through him. Even so, it's not easy to have this kind of strength in the common world, as the saying goes. One more friend means one more path. Even if he's a freelancer, it's still worth it for us to rope him in. Now that he's shown such talent, if other sects get him first. He's just a mortal freelancer, he's not worth the Dark Palace recruiting. But this Pingzhan is quite skillful, where did he find such a bodyguard? The Grand Elder said faintly, but you should investigate this Lin Yi's background. If he's really worth it, then we might as well give him some benefits. Whatever Pingzhan can give him, we can give him too. Grand Elder, you mean? Poaching? Elderly was taken aback. Didn't you tell me that this person has potential, that he's worth recruiting? The Grand Elder said faintly. But, Miss. Elderly paused, wondering if he'd done something unnecessary. He'd shot himself in the foot. Now Lin Yi was being watched by the Grand Elder, and he was being roped into the Palace of Darkness. What about Mingyao's safety? Are you trying to recruit a talent, or are you worried about the safety of a little bastard? The Grand Elder was a bit annoyed. All right, you can leave. People like you who care about this and that everyday people who are blinded by love, don't even think about the future of the Palace of Darkness. All you care about is that little bastard. If that little bastard can turn the Dark Palace into a first-class ancient sect, I'll even be her servant, otherwise there's no way. Then I'll take my leave. Elderly sighed helplessly, but he didn't dare to say anything more. The Great Elder was an extremist. As long as it was good for the Dark Palace and could promote the development of the Dark Palace, then she would sacrifice her life for it. But if it wasn't good for the Dark Palace, she wouldn't give in even if she was beaten to death. Elderly, on the other hand, was afraid that he'd said too much, and the Grand Elder insisted on recruiting Lin Yi to the Dark Palace. That way, where would Pingzhan find another powerful bodyguard? So Elderly decided to leave first. He turned and left the Grand Elder's place. In the Xiao family villa, Pai Jishan sat on the sofa with a serious face. Beside him was Xiao Ji and Xiao Ben, while Xiao Wangba and Xiao Wangdao stood respectfully on the side. By now Xiao Ji and Xiao Ben had learned of what had happened and they were both shocked. They thought that with Jin Wudi Lin Yi's family would be dead for sure, but in the blink of an eye, it was Jin Wudi's death. Even the young master of House Pai had lowered his head. Didn't that mean that Xiao family was in danger? Master Pai, you can't just leave Xiao family like that. We offended House Chu this time to help House Pai get some wealth. You can't just leave us like that. Xiao Ji was afraid that House Pai would just leave them be. They were a hidden house and if they just left, Lin Yi wouldn't be able to find them. Chapter 1377. Since House Pai chose to work with House Xiao, naturally we won't leave you guys alone. Plus, you guys were doing this for House Pai's money. Now that something happened, we can't just walk away. Xishan waved his hand telling Xiao Ji not to worry. Xishan was a scheming man, or else he wouldn't be the first heir of House Pai. As far as he was concerned, what the Xiao family did pissed him off, but they couldn't let go of the Xiao family right now. If they really did leave the Xiao family alone, it'd be a huge blow to House Pai's reputation. People worked for you and if you left them alone after something happened, who would work for you in the future? House Pai's reputation would be tarnished, and they wouldn't be able to earn money in the common world. Naturally, Xishan wouldn't do anything that would disappoint the Xiao family. Ah, big bro, you're worrying too much. Master Pai isn't that kind of person. If he didn't want to care about us, he wouldn't be sitting here. Xiao Ben laughed, praising Xishan. He and Xiao Ji had been brothers for so many years and they had great teamwork. With the two of them working together, they tied House Pai and Xiao family together. Xishan of course knew what the Xiao family brothers were up to. He just didn't want to expose them, smiling faintly. But that heir Gooden really isn't easy to mess with. You guys stay away from him and don't mess with him and don't even think about touching House Chu. All in all, House Pai is dead and the grudge is over. This was caused by Jin Wudi and it doesn't have much to do with us. If we don't do anything, Lin Yi probably won't come looking for trouble anymore. That's true. Xiao Ji nodded. This time he didn't dare think about anything anymore. Even House Pai gave in. How many brains did he have? Anyways, be careful when you do business with your Xiao family's influence in the common world and House Pai's name. You don't have to do anything illegal to earn money. Don't think of anything bad in the future. Look at House Yu's business, isn't it doing well too? Xishan stated his standpoint. The noble houses weren't part of the rules, but Xishan didn't want any more trouble, especially with Lin Yi and heir Gooden. If he pissed them off, it wouldn't be worth it. Yes, you're right, young Master Pai. Xiao Ben nodded and said, in the future, let's do some proper business. It's good that you know. Alright then, I'll go back first. In a few days House Pai will send another master over, but I'll restrict him as well. He can only do anything if his business is affected. As for business, he's forbidden from participating. Xishan said. House Pai had quite a lot of masters but they couldn't afford to lose so much. If this one died, it'd be a huge loss for House Pai. Young Master Pai, this time, can you send us an Earth class? Xiao Ji looked at the Earth class, his heart itching. If House Xiao had an Earth class, they'd be stronger than House Yu. Chapter 1378. There weren't any masters in the Chu Villa right now, only Wu Chintian, a golden class early phase. Faubert was on his way back, but he hadn't arrived yet, so Xishan easily found Gooden's room. Xishan put his ear on the wall, listening to the movements in the room. Hello? Oh, is this Grandpa Lin? I'm heir Gooden. Gooden was weakly calling old Lin on the phone. Now that he saw Lin Yi, he naturally got old Lin's number again. Now that Lin Yi wasn't here, he could only ask old Lin for help. Gooden, how are you? Why do you sound so weak? What's wrong? Old Lin didn't know what to make of Gooden's sudden call. He knew that Lin Yi had asked Gooden to protect Meng Yao and Yushu, but he wouldn't call if it wasn't something important. Grandpa Lin, I've used up all my strength and I can't suppress the negative effects anymore. What should I do? Lin Yi boss isn't back yet and I can't leave the villa yet. If I don't finish the mission. Gooden said. What? You've used up all your strength? Old Lin paused. Heir Gooden, if that's the case, you have to come back immediately. Otherwise your life might be in danger. It's fine, I can still hold on. Gooden smiled bitterly. Plus, I have to hold on. This is the mission boss gave me and I can't let him down. Then you can't use any more strength. Just lie in bed every day and when Lin Yi comes back, you go back to West Star Village immediately. Old Lin said after a sigh. He knew Gooden's personality. He was honest but stubborn. He promised Lin Yi that he would do something and he wouldn't stop halfway. Yeah, I know I'm lying in bed every day. Once Lin Yi boss comes back I'll go back, Gooden said. Hearing this, Pai Jishan's expression became even more confused. What was going on? There seemed to be a limit to Gooden's strength? Once it's used it can't be used again? Moreover he was leaving. Does that mean that this person is no longer a threat? No wonder she couldn't tell what level Gooden was at. He wasn't a practitioner at all, but had some special properties that allowed him to use unimaginable strength. But Jishan was a careful man. He didn't dare go in and test the waters. He didn't want to make Gooden and Lin Yi his enemy right now. He was used to planning before taking action. Everything had to be told to his father first. Everything had to be discussed before a decision could be made. At that moment there was a car sound in the villa's yard. Jishan didn't dare stay any longer. He turned and left the villa, disappearing without a trace. Faubert had just come back and he didn't notice that someone had come to the yard. He was worried about Gooden and after getting off the car he rushed into the villa to see him. At this moment, Gooden didn't know that his secret was already known by House Pai. Qibing and Sihua practically ran back to the floating cloud bar. They were both pissed that not only was Lin Yi not dead, but Jin Wudi was killed by one of Lin Yi's lackeys. But through this Qibing saw how strong Lin Yi was. Even his lackeys were this strong. Qibing decided that he shouldn't mess with Lin Yi for now. Who was Pai Jishan? He was the first heir of the hidden House Pai, and if he could lower his head to Gooden, then what was there to be proud of? He was the rightful head of the house and he was just a bastard child. Even Jin Wudi was dead in the sect. Lin Yi wouldn't even blink if he killed him. And now Qibing finally understood why Lin Yi was so fearless. He knew that he was from a hidden house and still dared to kill him. But now that he thought about it he was really lucky that he didn't die. Was House Xiao stronger than the Golden Bell sect? Even House Xiao didn't dare do anything to them, but Lin Yi and his lackeys had crippled the master and disciple. Call my father before we have absolute confidence. Don't touch Lin Yi. Let him have his fun for now. Qibing looked at Sihua and sighed. Although he felt wronged when he said this, he had to lower his head when he was under someone else's roof. It didn't matter if he felt wronged or not, he couldn't do anything to Lin Yi. All he could do was endure it. Master Bing, you did the right thing. A man knows when to yield and when to stand tall. There's a saying that goes, 10 years is not too late for a man to take revenge. We'll take care of Lin Yi when the day comes. Sihua nodded. Yao Wang and Uncle Zhu were silent as well. After fighting with Lin Yi for so long, they had to swallow their anger. I don't accept this. We must kill Lin Yi as soon as possible. Although Uncle Zhu's body had recovered quite a bit, it was still a lot more difficult for him to regain his peak strength. If my big brother was here he wouldn't have let me suffer. I don't know where the family head sent my big brother to carry out his mission. If he had stayed at home I'm afraid he would have broken through to Earth class already. Uncle Zhu, the head's business isn't something you can talk about. Sihua saw that Uncle Zhu was agitated and quickly reprimanded him. Qibing was here and he was his father after all. Be careful with your words. It's fine. Qibing waved his hand. Uncle Zhu is right, it's not just him, I think the same. But we don't have absolute confidence right now, so we'll let Lin Yi go for now. One day when we have absolute confidence, it'll be Lin Yi's time to die. Jin Wudi was dead. Normal people wouldn't care about this, but the noble houses and above received the news very quickly. The head of House Wu Gonggao was one of them. At this moment he was in the hospital getting in 4 drip when the news came. Patriarch, bad news. Something big has happened. A disciple of the Wu family who was in charge of gathering information, rushed into the ward in a hurry. Wu Gonggao had just regained his breath when he suddenly heard a disciple report that something big had happened. He was shocked and almost fainted on the sickbed again. Chapter 1379. I'm sorry. The disciple jumped at the sight of Jiaoqi's anger. It's the head of the house who ordered us to inform him immediately if something big happened. Jiaoqi, I said that, don't blame him. Gonggao said weakly. Tell me what happened. What exactly happened? Dad, your heart. Jiaoqi was worried that it was bad news for House Wu, so he tried to stop him. It's fine, I won't die yet. Qintian's too impulsive. and as his grandfather I have to take responsibility for him. Chintian waved his hand. Jiaoqi sighed. His father was a tyrant, but he was still the head of the house after all these years. He was a bit dissatisfied, but ever since Chintian showed his talent in martial arts, Gong Gao had been paying more and more attention to him, spoiling him a little. He'd even suggested Chintian to be the next head of House Wu during the family meetings. At this time Wu Jiaoqi's heart calmed down. In his generation he wasn't the only one. He had an elder sister and a younger brother. His elder sister was already married so she couldn't compete with him. But the most important thing was his younger brother and nephew. These two people were the real threat to him. But now that Chintian was confirmed as the next heir, Jiaoqi didn't have to worry about these two anymore. He'd even thought it through. If he didn't become the head of the house, then so be it. With his father's condition, it was possible that the position would be passed on to Chintian. What was the point of fighting for it? When Chintian became the head of the house, he'd have the same amount of power as the head of the house. However, Wu Jiaolong's younger brother, spoke up at this moment. His voice was stern and tears were about to fall from his eyes. Father, you have to protect your health. You are the pillar of the Wu family. If you collapse, our Wu family will be finished. There's no need to take responsibility for a junior's mistake. That's right, Grandpa. Bro Chintian may have gotten into trouble, but we still have me. The one who spoke was Chintian's younger brother, Chindi. He had always been a well-behaved and scheming person, and he didn't understand why his grandpa didn't think highly of him, instead favoring his stupid older brother. All the good things were taken by Chintian and Chintian could only be a nobody. What was this? In terms of practice level he wasn't bad. He was 1 year younger than Chintian, and although he broke through to golden class early phase later than Chintian, the two were already on the same level. Why didn't Grandpa look at him? Gong Gao looked at Jiaolong and Chindi calmly. So you're saying that we should give up on Chintian and use House Wu's resources to train you, Chindi? Grandpa, that's not what I meant. Chindi felt wronged. That's what I meant, but why did you say it out loud? Even if I can't admit it in front of so many people. Since that's not the case, then what else is there to say? Gong Gao interrupted Chindi and turned to the informant. Speak, what happened? Leader Jin Wudi is dead. The disciple looked at the Wu family's internal strife and was a little careful. Dead? What did you say? Jin Wudi is dead? How did he die? Gong Gao's eyes froze as he sat up from the bed, his eyes regaining their sharpness as he stared at the disciple. Master Tian's new boss, killed him with one punch, instant kill. The disciple said. Chintian's boss killed him? Or was it an instant kill? Wu Gonggao jumped up from the bed. The infusion tube in his hand had been torn apart, but he didn't know it at all. Is what you said true? Jin Wudi was killed by that heir Gooden? Yes, Patriarch, I dare not hide it. After this matter happened, I immediately came to report it to Patriarch. The disciple said. Ah. Gonggao started laughing, his laughter shaking the skies. That's great. The heavens have blessed us, House Wu. Wow, that Chintian kid has good eyes, he actually got a boss like this. Looks like House Wu has hope. At this time, other than Wu Gonggao, the happiest person was probably Wu Jiaoqi. Previously he was still trembling with fear because of his son's matter, fearing that his younger brother and nephew would join forces to seize the position of the family head. But now it seemed that the dark clouds had passed and the rainbow could be seen. It's all thanks to your teachings, father. This Chintian is lucky, he doesn't have that many schemes, but it's easier for people to accept him this way. Jiaoqi was mocking Jiaolong and Chindi, saying that they were scheming. What was the use of being smart? They weren't even as good as a random boss Chintian had chosen. Wu Jiaolong and Chindi's faces were very ugly. They had planned to use this chance to persuade Gonggao to bring Chintian back and let Chintian reflect on himself, replacing him with Chindi. But now it was all for naught. Grandpa, this is actually a blessing in disguise. Hidden houses have sky-class masters. Who knows if House Pai will come back for revenge. Let's not drag House Wu down with us. Chindi reminded. Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. Gonggao kicked Chindi. Scram, get out, I don't want to see you. Chindi was kicked away, his heart filled with sadness. He was only 1 year older than Chintian, and their training speed was about the same, so why did he have to like Chintian so much? Hatred flashed in Jiaolong's eyes as well. He didn't know why Gonggao didn't like him and his son. It had been like this since they were young and it was still like this now. It didn't matter if his talent was bad, but Chindi's talent was good. Jiaolong brought Chindi out of the room quickly, not daring to go against the old man at a time like this. After Jiaolong left, Gonggao's face calmed down. He turned to Jiaoqi, call Qintian immediately and ask about the situation. Chapter 1380. Qintian had taken over Gooden's position these days, sitting at the entrance of the villa's living room, eating and sleeping here, becoming another door god. Gooden breathed a sigh of relief as he saw this. He was a calculative man and this was a test for Qintian. If he really did his job well, then he wouldn't mind recommending him to Lin Yi when he came back. Qintian didn't mention a word about Gooden's injury to Gong Gao and Jiaoqi. He wasn't a calculative person, but he knew that his boss wanted him to keep it a secret, and it had to be something important. He couldn't just talk about it. Chu Villa. Other than having Qintian as Meng Yao and Yushu's bodyguard, there wasn't much of a change. Zhang Wen, on the other hand, knew that Gooden had killed Jin Wudi, but he wasn't afraid of anything. He was always in the dark, so he wasn't worried that Gooden would come to him. However, Gooden's identity pissed him off even more. Fuck, this Gooden is Lin Yi's follower. Zhang Wen's face darkened after seeing the news, raging, Lin Yi has a close relationship with that Lingshan bitch, so it's most likely that Lin Yi is the one who snitched it out. The news came from that Gooden. Calm down, young Master Wen. Killing Jin Wudi isn't a big deal. My biochemical experiments are in the late stages, and in time I'll be able to develop a great strength pill. If a normal person eats it, they'll be able to punch armored vehicles and kick UFOs. The professor said faintly, plus this time, other than getting money, our plan is to screw Lin Yi over, right? Even if Lin Yi and Lingshan are close, Lingshan won't be able to protect Lin Yi in front of the evidence. If she dares to do anything, then we'll ruin her name as well. With Lingshan gone, it'll be easier for us to get money in Song's Han. Yeah, you're right. Is the test subject here yet? Zhang Wen nodded. It's already here. I'm currently doing the last bit of stimulation on him. The Fire Wolf Gang's best plastic surgeon and hypnotist are also working hard to ensure that there won't be any mistakes. The professor said. Before this, his status was equal to Zhang Wen. One could even say that he came here to do some experiments under the orders of the Fire Wolves. Helping Zhang Wen was secondary. But now, with Zhang Wen earning more and more money for the Fire Wolves, Zhang Wen's position was rising as well. Every single idea he came up with was one of those profit-making businesses that didn't require any capital. Even the leader of the Fire Wolves branch was looking up to him. And so the professor became Zhang Wen's follower. He had to listen to Zhang Wen's orders. Very good. Zhang Wen nodded. Let's see how arrogant Lin Yi can be then. Lin Yi, who was sitting at the entrance of the underground palace, couldn't help but sneeze. It was already the second day and Xiaoke and Old Hei still hadn't found any secrets in the stone pillars. After a few detailed checks, they confirmed that there weren't any mechanisms or buttons on the pillars. In other words, every pillar was the same. From the outside there wasn't any difference. Damn it! Xiaoke slammed her palm on the pillar. This was the 100th time she checked the pillars, but she still couldn't find anything. It annoyed her. Dong! The stone pillar made a crisp sound under Xiaoke's attack. Empty. Xiaoke paused. Old Hei, Lingshan and Yutian turned to look at Xiaoke. They all copied Xiaoke's actions and started hitting the pillars in front of them. Each pillar made a crisp sound, but the sound was different. They're all empty. Is there some secret in the pillars? Should we open one and see? Old Hei suggested. No. Xiaoke frowned and pointed at the top of the pillar. The entire palace is supported by these pillars. Breaking one wouldn't guarantee the safety of this place. Then what do you mean, Miss Flying Sparrow? Old Hei asked. Let me think about it. Xiaoke patted the pillar in front of her and the other pillars nearby. Suddenly, a look of joy flashed across Xiaoke's face as if she'd found a clue. Everyone move aside and let us have the pillars. Old Hei, Lingshan and Yutian obeyed and left the pillar. Xiaoke knocked on every pillar in the palace, and after listening to the sounds, she stood in the middle of the palace and pondered for a while. Then she started knocking on different pillars in a seemingly random pattern. Old Hei, Lingshan, Yutian and even Elder Yu were all confused. What are you doing? Elder Yu couldn't help but ask. As far as he was concerned, this Xiaoke was just running around for no reason. Don't disturb her. Linny stopped Elder. If I'm not wrong, there's a total of 7 pillars in this palace, and each pillar represents a musical scale. The flying sparrow must have found the connection between the scales. Perhaps it's the elegy on the wall. That's right. The notes that you, Miss Flying Sparrow, struck out. Although the tempo was a bit off, the notes matched the melody of the elegy on the painting on the stone wall perfectly. Ling Shan knew a thing or two about music, and with Lin Yi's reminder she was able to see the connection between the two easily. Elder Yu nodded and Old Hei's eyes flashed with shock. It seemed that this tomb wasn't as simple as it seemed. The flying sparrow wasn't hired for nothing. The distance between the pillars was huge, and even with Xiaoka's qinggong, it still took her more than half an hour to complete the song. Fu. After hitting the last note, Xiaoka finally breathed out in relief. The designer was too much of a scammer, wasn't he? If it were a grave robber with poor stamina, they'd probably die from exhaustion. But then again, grave robbers with poor stamina wouldn't be able to do this. Watch out! Lin Yi suddenly yelled, and the entire floor of the palace started shaking. Lin Yi had called out to be careful because the jade had suddenly given him a warning, and he'd called out subconsciously. But his warning was pointless. It had only been a few seconds since the ground started shaking and cracking, and no one had time to react. The floor of the hall split into two, with the center of the hall as the horizontal line. One on each side was collapsing rapidly, tilting towards the sides. Chapter 1381. In just a few seconds the ground between the two palaces became vertical, and the people on the ground, due to gravity, all fell down rapidly. The stone pillars in the hall were still hanging vertically on the ceiling of the hall. It was only at this moment that the crowd realized that these stone pillars were not used to support the weight of the hall, but to activate the mechanism. Lin Yi, Yutian, Ling Shan, Old Hei, Elder Yu and General Wei Wu were on one side of the ground, while Xiaoka was on the other side. But although Lin Yi's warning was a little late, the group wasn't weak. At the last moment they managed to grab onto the edge of the ground. The ground was vertical, but there was still some friction between the two sides, and they were all hanging on the edge. Lin Yi looked at Xiaoka, realizing that she was prepared as well, using her eagle claws to hang on the edge of the ground. Lin Yi let out a breath of relief. Old Hei was the only one who didn't have any kung fu. He saw that everyone had reacted, but he couldn't do anything. The ground was vertical and he fell straight down. Help! Old Hei cried. Ling Shan frowned, subconsciously wanting to let go and jump down to save Old Hei. Her goal this time was to catch these grave robbers, and now that a few of them were dead, there was only Old Hei left. If Old Hei died too, then what was the point of this mission? But Lin Yi knew what Ling Shan was thinking. He wouldn't let her take the risk. I'll go. With that he let go and jumped down, reaching out to grab Old Hei. He then stepped on the stone wall beside him, returning to the edge of the ground. The entire movement was done in one smooth motion without a trace of sloppiness. This was an easy thing for Lin Yi, but Ling Shan didn't have enough experience, and Lin Yi was afraid that something would happen to her. Old Hei almost came back from the death. His gratitude towards the male thief was like a raging river. He took out the eagle claw hook and mimicked Xiaoka, hanging it on the edge of the ground. Thank you, male thief. Old Hei said, still fearful. You're still useful. Everyone's a part of their intelligence, and at this point we need to preserve our strength. Lin Yi said faintly. In fact, if it weren't for Ling Shan, Lin Yi wouldn't care about Old Hei's life. What's going on? Why is it so dark and deep down like a bottomless pit? Elder Yu frowned. Did they activate some sort of death trap? Lin Yi was hesitated. He couldn't tell if this was the right entrance to the palace. But evidently the person who built this place wouldn't have used this method to get to the palace. If a normal person fell down, they wouldn't be able to survive. Plus, Lin Yi could clearly feel a dangerous aura down there. The jade's warning hadn't stopped. Otherwise, according to the usual situation, he would already be hanging on the edge of the ground, and he could jump up and return to the previous tunnel. There shouldn't be any danger, so the only danger would come from the bottomless pit under his feet. This might be the entrance to the palace. Old Hei said after a sigh. This place does look like the legendary Tomb of Death. Tomb of Death? Elder Yu paused. What do you mean? Tomb of Death, it's the type of tomb that you can only enter but not get out. When it was designed, there wasn't an exit. This tomb was built from the outside to the inside. Once you go in, you won't be able to get out. You'll have to stay with the tomb forever. Old Hei explained. At that point, cold sweat started forming on old Hay's forehead. If that was the case, then he'd really lose his life this time. Then what do we do? Doesn't that mean we won't be able to get out after we go in? Elder Yu humphed. I don't know either. This is something from the legends. It's my first time seeing an entrance like this. Old Hay smiled bitterly. At that moment, the stopped mechanism seemed to be activated again. The two parts of the ground that were perpendicular to the ground suddenly rose up again, as if they were going to merge back together. Not good, the mechanism's coming back up, Linny said. Do we go down or not? Linny had made up his mind. Even if these people didn't go down, he would go down. Even if it was the death tomb, he had to go down. Even if he couldn't get out, as long as he got the medical notes and had General Wei Wu by his side, he would blast his way out even if he had to use a pure energy bomb. That. Elder Yu and Old Hay were hesitating. Ling Shan and Yu Tian, on the other hand, were waiting for Lin Yi's decision. If Lin Yi wanted to go down, then they'd do it. This place is the tomb of death, but if we go down we should be able to get out, Xiaoke said. Only the place where the coffin is kept is a dead end and we can't get out. The other places should be fine. Are you sure? Old Hay paused. I'm pretty sure. First, Zhang Liju is a healer and a healer has a kind heart. Even if he's about to die, he wouldn't be so evil as to let his workers die with him, Xiaoke analyzed. Second, if it really is a dead end and we can't get out, then what's the point of having a spirit beast guarding the door? Wouldn't that be unnecessary? You're right. Old Hay nodded. He was an experienced grave robber, and so he understood after hearing Xiaoke's words. Alright, let's go down. Flying Sparrow, when the ground is about to close up, let go. That way you'll be closer to me and it'll be safer if we go down together. Lin Yi said to Xiaoke. Alright. Xiaoke agreed without hesitation. She knew how dangerous it was down there and Lin Yi treated her a little special. No matter what, Lin Yi couldn't harm her. This time, Elder Yu and Old Hay didn't think that Lin Yi was being too concerned about Xiaoke. Since Lin Yi could even save Old Hay, it wasn't strange for him to care about Xiaoke's safety. Chapter 1382. Lin Yi had General Wei Wu, Xiaoke, Ling Shan and Yu Tian. 3 people and a dog was already hard enough. He couldn't bring Old Hay along. Elder Yu didn't want to bring people, but thinking of the danger, he grabbed Old Hay unwillingly. Jump. When the two sides were about to connect, Lin Yi yelled and grabbed Xiaoke. Yu Tian and Ling Shan grabbed Lin Yi on both sides, and they started descending rapidly. The abyss was so deep that they couldn't see the bottom with the light from the palace. Even practitioners with amazing eyesight could only see a few hundred meters down, and it wasn't the bottom. One could imagine how deep this place was. Don't hug me so tight, I can't breathe. Elder Yu wasn't happy with Old Hay hugging him so tightly. You're not a beauty, why are you hugging me so tight? Sorry, I'm a bit scared. Old Hay said awkwardly. I'll let go when we get down. Elder Yu humphed, but his eyes didn't even blink as he watched Lin Yi's movements. But as they got deeper and deeper, the light got dimmer and dimmer, and Elder Yu couldn't see Lin Yi's movements anymore. Male thief, what's down there? Is it dangerous? Elder Yu couldn't see Lin Yi at all, so he asked worriedly. Lin Yi couldn't see what was beneath him, but he closed his eyes and entered the jade space. He used his divine sense to sense what was going on around him, and everything around him became clear to him. It was a square tunnel and the 4 sides were smooth stone walls. There was no place to step on, and unless you wore shoes with high resistance you might be able to stick to the wall. Even if you stuck to the wall temporarily you'd fall off. Even though it was bright as day, Lin Yi still couldn't see what was down there. It was still a bottomless abyss. I don't know, you're an earth class and you're always afraid of this and that. What are you doing out here? It's safest to cultivate at home, Lin Yi said mockingly. Ignorant brat. My life is 10,000 times more important than you. It doesn't matter if you die, but I'm like porcelain, do you understand? Elder Yu blushed at Lin Yi's words, but he still defended himself. Heh. Lin Yi smiled sarcastically and didn't say anything else. Xiaoke had been hugged by Lin Yi before, but it was an emergency and he put her down after a while. She hadn't been hugged this tightly before, and now that she was leaning against Lin Yi's broad chest and smelling Lin Yi's manly scent, Xiaoke felt her heart palpitate and her face blushed. She'd never been this close to a boy in her entire life, and she'd never even thought about romantic love. She'd only cared about the orphanage ever since she could remember, and she'd never even thought about romantic love. Who would want to marry a burden like her? Unless her head was broken. Big families wouldn't be interested in a female cat burglar like her, and those without money wouldn't be able to support a large orphanage. As a result, Xiaoka put this aside for now and kept her chastity. If the orphanage really needed her, even if she didn't find a rich boyfriend, she could still sell her virginity for a good price, right? As long as it could help the orphanage, it would be fine. However, the male thief in front of her did make her heart flutter a little. Ever since she was young, other than her master, no one had ever cared about her like this, and no man had ever done this to her. Especially some of the missions from the Steel Sect, they were all life-threatening. Even if Xiaoka was as pretty as a goddess, no one would go easy on her. This was all about profit, and with money it wasn't easy to find beauties. Why would he want to find her? And so, every time Xiaoka went on a mission with the Steel Sect people, she had to be on the lookout for being framed. There was no love between them at all. The male thief, on the other hand, was different. Whenever she was in danger or trouble, he would always stand up for her. She didn't know if the male thief really wanted her beauty like old Hay had said, but no matter what, she felt a ripple in her heart. She had a good impression of the male thief. Most importantly, she felt that the male thief gave her a very familiar feeling, as if she'd seen him somewhere before, but she couldn't remember who. Could this male thief be her Prince Charming? Xiaoka started to think about random things in this tense situation, but when she thought about the female thief beside Lin Yi, she felt a little discouraged. He already had a partner, so he probably wouldn't be able to marry her. Of course, that wasn't what Xiaoka cared about the most. What she cared about was whether or not the male thief was willing to help the orphanage. If he couldn't, then there was no point in talking about anything else. Lin Yi didn't know that Xiaoka had so many weird thoughts popping out of her head. If he knew, he'd probably throw Xiaoka out right away. After about half an hour, everyone was still falling at a high speed. This was enough to show how bottomless this underground palace was. Even after such a long time, they still hadn't reached the bottom. No one knew how the people in the past built this place. Elder Yu was a little impatient and worried. Male thief, we won't just fall into the center, will we? Oh, then you can make a TV show when you get back. Lin Yi said, annoyed. This Elder Yu's strength didn't match his guts. He was as cowardly as a mouse. Afraid of death, he didn't look like an Earth class at all. Of course, if Jean Woody, who was already dead, heard this, he'd probably start crying. It was because he wasn't afraid of death that he really died. I think there's something wrong with this tomb. Elder Yu humphed and didn't say anything else. After a while, Lin Yi finally saw the bottom. It was so deep that he couldn't see the bottom. But relatively speaking, this tunnel did have a bottom. At the bottom of the tunnel there were many sharp weapons like a large nail board, the sharp end pointing upwards. If you didn't have any protection, you'd probably be pierced through if you fell down. If it was a normal person, they'd die, but Elder Yu was an Earth class after all. He was strong and at most he'd be injured, but it wasn't life-threatening. Chapter 1383. The tunnel wasn't straight, but it was in Anne's shape. Perhaps it was for convenience, but Lin Yi didn't see any use for it. All the tunnels in the tomb were like this, going up, down, left, right, and so on. The ground above them was completely sealed, and this caused the tunnel to be extremely dark. There wasn't a single trace of light. There were only a few dozen meters left before they reached the bottom, and Lin Yi didn't warn Elder Yu. Instead, he looked for a way out. Below them was a wall of sharp weapons, but to the left was an empty tunnel. With the right timing, Lin Yi would be able to jump over it. 30 meters, 20 meters, 10 meters. Lin Yi abruptly stepped on the wall on his right and pushed off, bringing Xiaoka and the others flying out. As he flew, he yelled, "Careful." A second later, Lin Yi and the others landed safely, and there was a poochit sound followed by Elder Yu's cry of pain. "Elder Yu, what's wrong? You didn't get tricked, did you? I warned you as soon as I noticed something was wrong. You're not that unlucky, are you?" Lin Yi pretended to be concerned. "Male thief, why didn't you warn me earlier? Did you do it on purpose?" Elder Yu was in so much pain. Many parts of his body were pierced by the nail boards. Old Hay, on the other hand, was fine. He was hugging Elder Yu's chest like an octopus, and now that he heard there was danger, he hugged Elder Yu even tighter. Xiaoka took out a flashlight and shone it in the direction of the sound. She realized that Elder Yu was in a horse-riding position. His feet were pierced by sharp weapons and his crotch was also pierced by a sharp weapon. It was a patch of blood. "Your balls are hurting." Lin Yi looked at Elder Yu. Good job, let's see how you fight me later. Mph. Male thief, you did it on purpose, didn't you? Elder Yu looked at Lin Yi's gloating face and got pissed. He flew over, his feet and crotch covered in blood. You can think whatever you want. Since I can sense danger, why can't you? I've already reminded you. What does it have to do with me if you get hurt again? Lin Yi said faintly, besides you're already so old. It's useless for you to have that thing. It doesn't matter if it's pricked. How do you know I'm useless? Elder Yu glared angrily. I've never had children in my life and I was planning to get married and have kids the day I broke through Sky Class. You won't be able to break through. Don't worry, Lin Yi comforted. Elder Yu realized that he might as well not talk to Lin Yi. Talking to him would only piss him off. Old Hay laughed dryly as he got down from Elder Yu's body. That was close, but Elder Yu had to suffer for him. Both his legs and balls were injured, but Elder Yu was in Earth class, naturally it wouldn't be a big deal. It was just a bit of pain and anger. This was another long hallway, but they didn't have the searchlights anymore. The searchlights from before had already fallen down when the floor tilted, and they'd been smashed into smithereens. All that was left was the torchlight that everyone brought with them. Elder Yu was regretting it a little. He should have shown the torchlight below him and he wouldn't have ended up like this. But he wasn't experienced enough. It was still Lin Yi, Xiaoke, Lingshan, Yutian and Weiwu walking in front, with Elder Yu and Old Hay trailing behind. Elder Yu's legs were injured and he was limping, but his speed wasn't slow. This should be the main part of the tomb, Xiaoke said suddenly. Oh. Old Hay and Elder Yu saw it as well. Not far from the hallway there were some displays. There were bookshelves, display racks and boxes. We're finally here. A smile appeared on Elder Yu's face and his legs and crotch weren't hurting as much anymore. He took a few steps forward, ready to find what he was looking for. But when he got in front of the displays he stopped and turned to Old Hay. Go open these chests for me, let me see what's inside. It seemed like Elder Yu was afraid of ropes after being bitten by a snake. He didn't dare act rashly anymore. Old Hay smiled bitterly, not daring to disobey. He walked over carefully to one of the chests, looking around for a long time, his face a little conflicted. What are you waiting for? Elder Yu barked impatiently. Elder Yu, forgive me for being blunt, but these things are at the edge of the palace and I don't think they're anything good. They're used to get rid of low-level grave robbers. Old Hay was speaking the truth. Things that were placed in the open usually weren't that valuable. I told you to open it, so open it. What are you waiting for? Elder Yu humphed, not understanding this. Flying Sparrow, why don't you open the chests, and all the things in here belong to you? Old Hay didn't dare open the chests, and there was one thing he didn't say. These benefits on the surface were mostly for fools. Once you opened it, danger would follow. No way, I don't give my things to anyone, Elder Yu said after hearing Old Hay's words. Old Hay felt a little annoyed, thinking that if you didn't save his life he'd call you an idiot. What you want is so valuable, why would you put it in the open? Did you think the grave robbers were idiots? Then you open it, it's all yours, Lin Yi said faintly as he looked at Elder Yu. Elder Yu was losing to Lin Yi and Lin Yi was making him blush. Isn't it just a chest? Lin Yi walked over and opened the chest casually. When Lin Yi opened the chest, the jade didn't warn him, so Lin Yi wasn't worried about trouble. The chest was opened and there was a neat box of gold ingot inside. Other than that, there wasn't anything else. Old Hay and Elder Yu looked at each other, not showing much interest. Elder Yu's goal this time was these three things, and whether it was the common house Yu or the hidden house Yu, they didn't lack money, so this box of gold ingot wasn't worth much. Chapter 1384. Seeing that Lin Yi didn't find anything wrong with the chest, Elder Yu gathered his courage and walked over, quickly opening the other chests. Other than gold and silver there was nothing else. Elder Yu was a little disappointed. You're right, let's go look at the display rack. These things. Xiaoke looked greedily at the treasures in the chests and pointed at them. Flying Sparrow, if you like it I'll give it all to you. Old Hay naturally didn't care about these things. He might as well be a good person and give them to Xiaoke so she could work harder. Really? Xiaoke paused and was overjoyed. She took out a bag and prepared to take all the gold back. To Xiaoke, these antiques weren't as practical as the gold. It was easy to get rid of and it was money. Plus, with Xiaoke's personality, she'd rather die from exhaustion than give up on money. Lin Yi's mouth twitched. This Xiaoka was really greedy. These things were heavy and it was hard to move around with them. But thinking about it, even if there was something good, Xiaoka wouldn't be able to snatch it. It was better to take something that others didn't want. Xiaoka started putting the gold ingot into her bag, her smile almost reaching her ears. This gold was enough to support the orphanage for a long time. How could Xiaoka not be excited? Xiaoka finished one chest and went to another. But when her hand touched the gold bar in the chest, Lin Yi's jade emitted a warning signal. Above the originally empty passageway, a huge rock had appeared out of nowhere. It appeared above Xiaoka silently, and when Xiaoka touched the gold bar, the rock in the sky made a cracking sound and fell down abruptly. The target was Xiaoka's head. Careful! Lin Yi yelled, and Xiaoka heard something above her head as well. She looked up subconsciously and saw a giant rock falling down just like that. Xiaoka was scared out of her wits. She didn't want to accept this. She was about to get so much gold and the orphanage would have a place to live. That was such a wonderful thing, but why was she going to die here? She was so unlucky. Speaking of which, Xiaoka was a smart thief and her actions in the tomb proved that, but this time she was blinded by the money. Plus, when she took the first chest of gold ingot she was actually on guard, but nothing happened, so she let her guard down. She saw Elder Yu and Old Hei walk to the display cabinet far away, and Lin Yi and the others were still waiting for her. She was a little anxious and that was why she made such a huge mistake. Lin Yi saw that Xiaoka was staring at the rock like a fool and didn't know how to dodge. He quickly ran to Xiaoka and carried her, running to the side and barely dodging the rock. There was a loud crash and the rock smashed into the place where the treasure chests were, sinking a few chests into the ground. One could see how strong the rock was, and if it hit a person they'd be dead for sure. Chapter 1385. Could it be that he knew her? Did he know her real name? One had to know that Xiaoka's name had never been made public in the thieves' sect. She'd always used the flying sparrow hero, so how did he know her name? She'd felt a sense of familiarity when she looked at him. Was he a friend she knew in real life? But did he really call her Xiaoka? Xiaoka wasn't too sure. Could it have been a hallucination when she was so shy? But the male thief didn't call her that? Xiaoka didn't know what was going on. What are you doing? You're walking all over the place. Are you pretending to be a crab? Ling Shan was already pissed off, and seeing Xiaoka walking all over the place she got even angrier. Walk 2 steps faster or the man's going to come back to save you. Oh. Xiaoka looked at Ling Shan feeling wronged. It's your man who's acting like a pervert, alright? Why was she blaming her now? Naturally, Xiaoka assumed that Ling Shan was pissed off because she and Lin Yi were in a relationship, and being seen by the female thief was pissed off. But one had to admit that Xiaoka's guess was pretty reliable. She was almost killed. She's still in shock. Carry her if you think she's slow. Lin Yi frowned as he turned back to look at Ling Shan. Lin Yi, on the other hand, didn't think too much about it. He thought that Ling Shan was pissed off because she was a female thief and wanted to punish her. Ling Shan bit her lips. She was about to explode. Why was she treating a female thief better than her? Am I that hard to move your heart? She was a bit of an idiot before, but she wasn't anymore. She was much calmer and more mature now, no longer the hothead she used to be. Was she still not as good as a female thief? Xiaoka opened her mouth, stunned. She looked at Ling Shan's chest heaving up and down and couldn't help but sigh. Why did it seem like the male thief wasn't treating her well? Could it be that he was getting tired of the old and was interested in her? With that thought, Xiaoka started to feel conflicted. Did this mean that she had a chance to kill the female thief and become one? But it seemed that if the male thief liked the new and got tired of the old, what if he replaced her after a while? What would happen to the orphanage if she became a withered flower and lost her capital? No, I have to think about it carefully. Although I have a good impression of the male thief, this is related to my life and the future of the orphanage. I can't act rashly. Xiaoka quickened her steps and followed, giving Ling Shan an apologetic look. Ling Shan didn't know what to do with Xiaoka. With Lin Yi here, there was no way she could bring her back. Whatever, she was here to catch the grave robber. She didn't want to cause more trouble. She was here to catch the grave robber. With Xiaoka as an example, Old Hei and Elder Yu didn't say anything, but the two of them became much more careful. They only looked at the antiques and utensils in the racks casually, keeping their eyes and ears open to all directions, paying attention to any incoming danger at all times. These are all normal utensils. Old Hay said faintly after looking. These were antiques, but they weren't worth much. They were the same as the pile of treasures in front of the door, just to fool people. They weren't made from famous official kills, and they belonged to the market. They were worth a few thousand to tens of thousands of kwai, and the most expensive one was only 100,000 or 200,000. Old Hay didn't care about that. If Old Hay didn't care about it, naturally Elder Yu wouldn't care either. Plus, Elder Yu was here for treasures, not money. His attention was on the chi-gathering pill and the medical notes, as well as the notes of the legendary refiner. Evidently, something as important as this should be kept in the vault or library or even in the main tomb. There was no way something as precious as this could be placed in a long hallway outside the tomb. Even so, Elder Yu still checked the utensils one by one, wanting to see if there was anything hidden inside. There's nothing I want. You guys can take it if you want. Elder Yu said faintly. Lin Yi walked over and looked at them one by one before leaving. Xiaoka was still in shock from what happened. She wanted to take a few utensils, but she was afraid that the rock would appear again. She shook her head and left with Lin Yi. Lingshan and Yutian weren't here to rob tombs, so it didn't matter if the things here were valuable or not. The group continued walking, and on the left and right side of the hallway, there were still treasure chests and display cabinets, but they all left after a few glances. Xiaoka, on the other hand, didn't dare to be greedy, and only took a few gold ingots from each chest. She didn't want to be greedy, and she still paid attention to the surroundings to see if there was any danger. Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Xiaoka wasn't as greedy as before, but she was still greedy. Lin Yi had to help her predict danger when she took the gold ingot. What was this? Not far away, the group saw a bookshelf, and Elder Yu ran over quickly. He was only interested in books and pills, nothing else mattered to him. This was the first bookshelf he saw. Naturally, he wouldn't let it go so easily. Lin Yi, on the other hand, followed quickly. Elder Yu wouldn't let these things go, and neither would he. The reason why Lin Yi kept using opportunities to trick Elder Yu was so that he could have an easier time in the fight. Elder Yu wasn't too happy with Lin Yi's actions, but he couldn't do anything about it. Lin Yi knew medicine, and so he could tell what the books on the bookshelf were. These were all medical books, but they weren't the only ones or the lost ones. These were all normal medical books and pharmacopoeias, and the bookstores in the market had copies of these books, so it wasn't strange at all. However, the real purpose of this bookshelf might be to confuse those little thieves who came in to steal. They didn't know that medical books were unique. The real value of these books was not the content inside, but the book itself. Ancient books were also a kind of antique. They could be collected by scholars or gifts to friends. Each book was worth a lot. Chapter 1386. Seeing that Lin Yi was already far away, Elder Yu pulled his eyes back unwillingly and followed. As far as he was concerned, Lin Yi was a careful man. Since Lin Yi was sure that there was nothing left, there was no point in looking. Plus, he didn't know much about antiques, and he felt that the male thief should be more professional than he was. There's a stone door in front, and after opening it, it should be the path to the main tomb, but there might be danger in there. Old Hay shone his flashlight not far away. These things at the door are obviously prepared for normal tomb robbers. Prepared my ass, it's for the dead, right? Lin Yi said faintly. The flying sparrow was almost smashed to death. Plus, the entrance to the tomb can only go down, not up. Normal tomb robbers wouldn't be able to get out after taking these things. Old Hay paused but nodded. Lin Yi's words made sense. The tomb robbers that could come here weren't simple people. How could there be any normal tomb robbers here? These things at the door were just triggers for the mechanism, and they weren't very valuable. Even if they were broken, it wouldn't be a waste. The stone door is the same as before. It's still a password lock, but my tools are all broken. It'll be very hard to open this door. Old Hay looked at the door. Elder Yu, do you have any good ideas? What good ideas can I have? Elder Yu said. I don't know about these things. You came here and you're just a piece of trash. You still want this and that. Lin Yi said faintly. If I'm not wrong, the password for this door should be the same as the one before. Tomb robbers who can come here are all masters, and it's only a matter of time for them to crack a mechanism like this. Even if they don't have the equipment, they can solve it with patience, so the designer wouldn't spend too much effort on this. What Lin Yi said was actually what Bojia's data, as far as he was concerned. If there was a password in the tomb, then the password should be the same. Blackie paused. Blackie was the one who cracked the password, so he had a deep impression of it. He moved the roulette on the stone door according to the previous set of numbers. Soon there was a crisp click and the stone door opened. Blackie looked at Lin Yi with admiration. You're really experienced. Let's not talk too much. Everyone be careful. There might be more traps here. Lin Yi glanced at the corridor behind the stone door and said. For some reason, Lin Yi kept feeling that there was a faintly discernible dangerous aura inside, but the jade pendant didn't give him any warning. In other words, this dangerous aura wouldn't be dangerous if he didn't do anything, but if he triggered some major mechanism there might be great danger. Lin Yi's words made Elder Yu, who was about to walk in first, retract his feet immediately. He looked at the group warily. You guys go first. Not to mention that the ground above had merged. Even if it hadn't, it would still be difficult to climb up. The entire passage was a huge S shape, and the stone walls were smooth enough to be used as a slide. When they fell, they didn't feel any obstruction when they bumped into the stone walls. It could be said that this kind of place was easy to go down but difficult to climb up unless they had something like a suction cup. But this roundabout route, if they didn't rely on gravity to slide down naturally, how long would it take to climb up? Chapter 1387. Just these few items alone could bring him an income of over 100 million. This trip was already worth it. Lin Yi took a look and saw that old Hay only took some flashy stuff. They were good for collecting but they weren't really useful. He wasn't a medical person. I'm done. What about you guys? You guys don't want anything? Old Hay turned to Lin Yi and Ling Shan. Elder Yu had already looked through everything in the store. There wasn't anything he wanted. As for the other stuff, it didn't matter to him whether they were valuable or not. Lin Yi's eyes had locked onto a set of needles the moment he entered the room. Although Lin Yi looked calm on the surface, his heart was raging with waves of shock. If he wasn't wrong, that set of needles was the long-lost Fushi 9 needles. Fushi 9 needles. Lin Yi had read about it in a medical book. It was the miracle of acupuncture. It was said that this needle could bring the dead back to life, and all the needles used today were derived from the Fushi 9 needles. Whether or not this thing was that amazing, Lin Yi didn't know, but it was true that it had been lost for a long time. Acupuncture was invented by Fushi, one of the 3 sovereigns in the ancient times. Whether Fushi's 9 needles were used by Fushi was unknown. However, this set of heaven-defying godly tools had been mentioned in many strange and unusual books. Lin Yi recognized the Fushi 9 needles in front of him because he saw the picture of the Fushi 9 needles, but he couldn't tell if it was real or fake. Lin Yi could only ask the old man for confirmation, but it was real if he wanted to keep it in his pocket. Because Ling Shan was here, Lin Yi didn't want to put her in a difficult position. With her personality, she'd probably make him hand it over after this, so Lin Yi didn't move. He bent down and whispered something to General Wei Wu before standing up and leaving the room. Let's go. Since there's nothing else, let's go to the next room. Lin Yi walked out first. Ling Shan and Yutian followed closely behind, with Elder Yu, Old Hay and Xiaoka all leaving as well. General Wei Wu was the last to leave, but no one noticed that one of its claws was carrying something. The second collection room was obviously a place to store all kinds of finished pills and herbs. As soon as he entered, he saw a neat row of medicine cabinets. Every small drawer was labeled with the name and usage of the medicine. It was obvious that they were commonly used by the owner of the tomb when he was alive. Lin Yi quietly took the 9 Fushi needles from General Wei Wu and kept it in his pocket. General Wei Wu could understand what Lin Yi was saying. As soon as he stepped in, Elder Yu started looking for the qi-gathering pill he wanted, scanning the list of items one by one. Lin Yi wasn't in a rush to find any qi-gathering pills, but he opened a few boxes casually. What disappointed him was that the boxes were empty. There weren't any ingredients stored inside. The owner of the tomb probably knew that most of the ingredients couldn't be kept for long, so he didn't put them inside. The only reason he kept this set of medicine cabinets was because it was something he used before he died and he was sentimental about it. This room was clearly much more full than the previous one. The walls were all filled with medicine cabinets, so many that it was dazzling. Lin Yi confirmed that the medicine cabinets were mostly empty. He was a little disappointed. Lin Yi had placed his hope of finding the fire spirit's fruit in here, but it seemed like that hope was very slim now. While Elder Yu was looking for chi-gathering pills, Lin Yi was looking for the fruit as well. But Lin Yi was a master of medicine and his eyes were better than Elder Yu's. After Lin Yi finished one cabinet, Elder Yu was only halfway through another. Old He and Xiaoka naturally weren't interested in the things in front of them, and Lingshan and Yutian were helping Lin Yi look for the fruit. It's here. Lingshan suddenly pointed at a drawer. Where? Elder Yu heard Lingshan scream and subconsciously jumped in front of Lingshan, scaring her. Where's the chi-gathering pill? Is there something wrong with you? What chi-gathering pill? I'm talking about a type of herb. Lingshan wasn't happy with Elder Yu's sudden appearance. Elder Yu looked at the drawers. There really wasn't a chi-gathering pill, and he couldn't help but be disappointed. He humphed and dodged to the side, but with his suspicious personality he wouldn't just leave like that. He wanted to see what Lingshan had found. Fire Spirit's fruit. Lin Yi looked at the label on the drawer and his breathing quickened. There really was something like this? And it seemed like there was more here? Lin Yi walked over quickly and opened the drawer, but what disappointed Lin Yi was that the drawer was empty, just like the other herbs. Phew. Lin Yi sighed, there's nothing. Elder Yu didn't know why Lin Yi was looking for this fruit, but seeing that there was nothing in the drawer he didn't care anymore and turned to look for the chi-gathering pill. Lin Yi closed the drawer disappointed, but it was within his expectations. After calming himself down he started looking for the chi-gathering pill Elder Yu was talking about. Soon Lin Yi's eyes landed on a drawer with chi-gathering pills written on it, but Elder Yu hadn't noticed it yet. What you're looking for is here. Lin Yi walked over and opened the drawer. Lin Yi knew that his every move was under Elder Yu's watchful eye, and he couldn't sneak around under his nose. Even if he didn't tell him, Elder Yu would definitely find this place soon, so Lin Yi might as well just tell him. There was no need to start a fight with Elder Yu over something like this. Lin Yi still needed to preserve his strength to look for the medical notes. This time there was really something in the drawer. They were two small medicine bottles, each of which was small and exquisite, sparkling and translucent. Each of them was labeled with the words, Chi-gathering pill, written in seal script. At this time, Elder Yu came over as well. He looked at the two bottles of chi-gathering pills in the drawer, greed in his eyes. Who knew what he was thinking? The chi-gathering pill is here. I've looked, there are two bottles here and each bottle has one chi-gathering pill. According to our agreement we'll each take one, so I'll take one of the bottles. Lin Yi said as he reached for one of the bottles. Chapter 1388. Slow? What do you mean? Lin Yi raised his head and looked at Elder Yu sharply. Are you going back on your word? Over there are some other elixirs, chi replenishing pills, detoxification pills, etc. Those should be more useful to you. Why don't you give these two chi gathering pills to me and I'll give you all the other elixirs? Elder Yu pointed at the cabinet not far away. Are you stupid? Lin Yi looked at Elder Yu like he was an idiot. We agreed that you only want the chi gathering pills and the medical notes. If there are two chi gathering pills I'll have one, and if you find the medical notes I'll make a copy. Other than that you don't need anything else. I can take the rest of the elixirs if I want. What does it have to do with you? Elder Yu's face turned ugly after hearing Lin Yi's words. Lin Yi was right, he did say that before, but he thought that there was only one chi gathering pill in the tomb. He didn't think that there would be two. Now that he saw two he was tempted. He wanted to keep one for himself and give the other to House Yu because he was in Earth class as well. There was no guarantee that he wouldn't reach Earth class late phase peak one day, and if he did he'd be able to break through to Sky class in one go. His position in the hidden House Yu would skyrocket. However, if there was only one chi gathering pill, even if he found it they wouldn't give it to him. It would be reserved for the core members of the hidden House Yu, and he wouldn't be able to get it. But Lin Yi didn't want to give it to him and this made him furious. He was in Earth class. Normal mystic, even mystic late phase peak would be scared when they saw him. The difference between Earth class and mystic class was like heaven and earth. But Lin Yi wasn't afraid at all. He had that chi bomb killer move, making Elder Yu very wary. He could only be angry in his heart, not daring to argue with Lin Yi too much on the surface. Take yours yourself. If it weren't for the fact that I don't want to kill you, I wouldn't even give you a bottle. Lin Yi took his bottle and left one for Elder Yu. Elder Yu heard Lin Yi's words and his heart was about to explode, but there was nothing he could do. The more Lin Yi threatened to kill him, the more he didn't dare to anger Lin Yi. especially now that his body was full of injuries. His right hand was injured, his feet were injured, and most importantly, his crotch was injured. With so many injuries, he still had to fight with Lin Yi head-on. He had no confidence in winning at all, which was why he was so patient. Elder Yu took the bottle from the drawer and put it into his pocket, gritting his teeth in anger. Then the rest of the pills are all mine. Don't force me to blow you up. Lin Yi said faintly. Elder Yu was choked by Lin Yi's words, and after a while he said, I'm injured, I won't stoop to your level. Don't think I'm scared of you. Elder Yu thought, when I recover in a few days, do you think I'll let you be so cocky? I'll just take it from you then. Lin Yi quickly walked to the other drawers and opened all of them, but most of the drawers were empty, only a few had something in them. The drawers with something in them were Qi returning pill, injury medicine, painkiller, and life replenishing pill. These 4 were all very common pills. Only the Qi returning pill belonged to the level of a pill refiner, but the other things like painkiller, injury medicine, and life replenishing pill, Lin Yi knew the recipe and could make them in batches, and with some modifications the cost would be lower. But the pill wasn't very useful to Lin Yi. He'd heard of the effects of the pill before, that it could recover a certain amount of strength in a short amount of time, but it couldn't be used continuously. It was useless to use it too often. Lin Yi, on the other hand, had the jade space, so the Qi returning pill was useless to him. Lin Yi took out all the elixirs from the drawer and gave them all to Xiaoke. Here, take it. For a dumb girl like you who goes on adventures all the time and likes to challenge people, it's a good thing to have more elixirs on you. Ah, he's giving it all to me. Xiaoke froze. These were all good stuff. She couldn't believe it. The male thief was treating her too well, wasn't he? Was he really interested in her? Her skills? A little, at least not as good as the male thief. He was a mystic class master, even stronger than her Shifu. Xiaoke really wanted that. But challenging people all the time? That didn't seem to be the case. Since when did she challenge people? Ever since entering the tomb, she'd been very quiet. Why would she challenge people? Xiaoke was confused. She seemed to have challenged someone once, and it was that time when Lin Yi humiliated her, and that was when she stood up to challenge him. But how did the male thief know? He couldn't be Lin Yi, could he? Xiaoke suddenly had a bold thought, but she shook her head immediately. How was that possible? Lin Yi couldn't be a couple, wasn't that a little too ridiculous? Besides, the male thief treated her so well and Lin Yi treated her so badly, how could they be the same person? That was impossible. Lin Yi was such an evil person, it was an insult to the male thief. Before entering the tomb, the male thief had been protecting Xiaoke, and in the tomb he'd been protecting her everywhere. How could he be the same person as Lin Yi? If Lin Yi heard Xiaoke's thoughts, he'd probably be pissed off they were the same person, and he'd become better by covering his face? What kind of pervert was he? I'll give it all to you, don't come here anymore, it's too dangerous. Lin Yi reminded Xiaoke solemnly that if he didn't come with her this time, what awaited Xiaoke would be the death of a beauty. Xiaoke nodded, remembering the words of the male thief. Yes, it really was too dangerous. Xiaoke felt scared just thinking about it. If it wasn't for the male thief protecting her, she would have died a long time ago. Thinking about how old He used her as cannon fodder, Xiaoke felt very annoyed and angry. This guy was so evil, even worse than Lin Yi. Chapter 1389. Seeing that Lin Yi gave those pills to Xiaoke, Elder Yu gritted his teeth in anger, but he couldn't say anything. With a humph, he left the room ready to go to the next one. Xiaoke happily put away the things Lin Yi gave her and happily followed Lin Yi out of the room, heading to another room not far away. Old He opened the door and Elder Yu walked in first. This was a library with bookshelves all around filled with all sorts of books. Lin Yi walked in and glanced at it. Other than medical books, there were many books on botany, evidently kept for researching herbs. Seeing that it was a study, Elder Yu's face lit up with excitement. The medical notes he was looking for should be here. Old He already got what he wanted, and these rooms were just accompanying someone else. What he wanted to know the most now was how to get out of this tomb. The path from before was definitely not working, climbing out from the pit was not realistic at all. Although it wasn't a long distance in a straight line, it was full of twists and turns, and the walls were terrifyingly slippery. It was impossible to get up without specialized tools. He could only focus on the other exits, but would they be easy to find? He could only place his hopes on Xiaoka and Lin Yi. Out of everyone here, only the two of them were strong, and he had some experience as well. Elder Yu was as timid as a mouse and arrogant, so there was no way he could place his hopes on him. Elder Yu's eyes scanned all the bookshelves as soon as he entered, but there were just too many books in the room, so many that it was shocking. Even if there weren't tens of thousands of books, there were at least a few thousand densely packed on the shelves. Elder Yu felt like he was getting dizzy from the sheer number of books. Looking at the medical books, Elder Yu frowned. How long would it take to find them? Come look with me. If we find them, I'll let you make a copy. Elder Yu thought about it and said to Lin Yi. Two people looking together was better than one person. He could only promise some benefits to Lin Yi, otherwise he wouldn't have the motivation. But, Elder Yu didn't understand, what did Lin Yi want the medical notes for? He was just a thief, why would he want something like that? There were so many medical books in this room and he didn't want them, why did he want the medical notes? Wasn't he going against him? Lin Yi wasn't in a rush to look through the bookshelves. Medical notes were different from medical books after all. It was more of a diary, and it usually wrote down what patients were treated today, and what patients were treated tomorrow. It was a personal item and it shouldn't be placed in the library. I don't think so, don't bother looking. Lin Yi said faintly. These are all medical books, and personal belongings like medical notes should be placed together with Zhang Liju's other personal belongings. If I'm not mistaken, it should be in the last stone room. Oh? Then let's go to the last room first. Elder Yu hesitated, but he felt that Lin Yi's words made sense. He nodded and said, yes, Elder Yu. The others didn't have much interest in these ancient books. These medical books were precious, and many of them didn't exist in the world anymore, but Lin Yi didn't care about them. Old Lin's library was even bigger than this place and there were more books. Old Lin basically had everything here. Lin Yi was the first to leave the library, so he went to the next door first, and this was the last door in the hallway. At least it was the last door within 100 meters. In front of him there was nothing on both sides of the wall, but the light from the flashlight was limited, so he couldn't see clearly. However, Lin Yi didn't open the door hastily, because Lin Yi was in front of the last door, and the jade sent a faint warning signal. When Lin Yi wanted to open the door, the warning signal got stronger and stronger. And so Lin Yi didn't make a move and just stood there waiting for Elder Yu to come. Why aren't you going in? Elder Yu paused. Waiting for you in case someone as petty as you thinks that I'm taking everything for myself. Lin Yi said faintly. Humph, you want to copy the medical notes, so you're trying to please me, right? Elder Yu humphed coldly and said proudly. With that he pushed the stone door open and walked in with big steps. But when Elder Yu walked in, what followed was a cry of pain. My eyes. My eyes, it's poison in the stone room. Old Hay, who was standing at the door and wanted to go in, shivered. This tomb was really dangerous. There was no danger before and he thought that everything would be fine, but now there was danger again. Even Elder Yu was injured? Male thief, you little brat, you want to trick me? Let me be the cannon fodder first. Elder Yu roared and rushed out of the stone room. His eyes were wide open, but his left eye was dull and lifeless. Evidently there was something wrong with it. Only his right eye was normal. Lin Yi, who was standing at the door, had a cold smile on his face. You're the one who's being tricked. But what made Lin Yi feel regretful was that Elder Yu only lost one eye, not both. This was a bit of a waste. It was painful for Elder Yu, but it wouldn't affect their strength much in a fight. I tricked you? Are you kidding me? You went in yourself, how am I tricking you? Don't tell me I'm the one who created this tomb? Lin Yi humphed coldly. I've reminded everyone before, there should be danger in here. Who can you blame for being careless? Elder Yu was a bit pissed. Yeah, who could he blame for being careless? Lin Yi did say that there should be danger in the main tomb, but the treasure rooms didn't seem to be dangerous at all, so Elder Yu lowered his guard. Elder Yu, your eyes. Inside? Old Hay asked, concerned. There's poison in here. If I didn't react fast enough, my eyes would have been ruined. Elder Yu said furiously. Serves you right, every time you enter the stone room, you're always trying to get in first, as if you're afraid people will steal your stuff. Lin Yi said mockingly, are you going in or not? Chapter 1390. At first, Elder Yu didn't dare to go in, but after seeing Lin Yi walk in without any problems he followed. What pissed him off was that not only did he lose his bloodline, but he also lost an eye. It was a huge loss. The wounds on his arms and legs were easy to recover from, but his testicles were pierced, and his eye was blinded by poison. It wasn't that easy to recover from. There was nothing special about this stone room, and it looked like a bedroom. There was a bed, a table, a small cabinet, and some simple living utensils. It was just like the place the owner lived in when he was alive. If Lin Yi's guess was right, these rooms and this stone room were all remodeled based on Zhang Liju's lifetime. The things and furniture were the same as before. Zhang Liju had no children, no disciple, and he lived his life alone. But since there were countless people who were indebted to him, naturally, there would be people who would pay to build this tomb for him. On the wall of the room there was a line of words. Medicine can cure the poison, but no medicine can cure the gentleman on the roof. Lin Yi looked at the words on the wall. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. Perhaps this was Zhang Liju's warning to tomb robbers. Or perhaps this little trap had always existed in Zhang Liju's house. And if it was an old friend who came to visit, naturally it would be his best friend who knew how to cure the poison. But the gentleman on the roof could only change his profession. Elder Yu looked at the words on the wall. He was shaking with anger. But the owner of the tomb had died a long time ago and he couldn't do anything about it. How could he do that to a dead man? Lin Yi looked around the room and his eyes landed on the small box on the bedside. Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. This Zhang Liju was really on par with the old man at home. There was also a small wooden box on the old man's bed. Inside it were some miscellaneous items such as paper, pen, glasses, and some other commonly used items. Of course, the old man also had a medical notebook which was placed in this box. Therefore, Lin Yi didn't say anything and went straight to the bed. He took the box and opened it. Sure enough, there were 2 books and some commonly used small things in it. Ancient brushes, ink, paper, and inkstones weren't as simple as modern ones. It wasn't easy to put them in the box, so there weren't any. There were 2 books in the box, one thick and the other thin. The thick one was his medical notes. An excited look appeared on Lin Yi's face. He had finally found it. There should be news about the fire spirit's fruit in the medical notes. Their goal this time was Zhang Liju's medical notes, and now that they had found it, how could Lin Yi not be excited? Xiao, there was finally hope. Lin Yi couldn't help but want to jump up and shout, "Long live the old man!" Even someone as patient as Lin Yi couldn't help but tremble with excitement. But in order not to reveal too much of his emotions, he held it in for now. The thin one, on the other hand, made Lin Yi pause. Notes of a refiner? What was this? At that moment, Elder Yu saw the 2 books in Lin Yi's hands and he reached out to grab them. Elder Yu was an earth class, but Lin Yi's reaction speed was faster than his, and Lin Yi had been paying attention to Elder Yu's movements. This was an extremely important book to him. How could he let Elder Yu take it away? What? You want to take it? I'll make a copy and give it to you naturally, Lin Yi said faintly. What's the other one in your hands? Let me see. Elder Yu, on the other hand, didn't care about the medical notes anymore. His attention was on the notes that Lin Yi was injured in. The medical notes were just something that Elder Yu could do without. House Yu only hoped to find something related to alchemy from it, but with the refiner's notes, the medical notes weren't that important anymore. As for the medical stuff, Elder Yu and House Yu didn't really care about it. It's some refiner's notes, it's not something you want. What are you looking at? Lin Yi didn't have the intention to give the notes to Elder Yu at all. In fact, Lin Yi was shocked when he saw the book. Elder Yu had explained so much about the strengths and advantages of a refiner, and Lin Yi was drooling over it. Now that he saw this notes, how could Lin Yi not take it for himself? If Lin Yi didn't take it for himself, he'd be an idiot. Elder Yu wanted to leave, but that was impossible. 1 was robbing, 2 was robbing. At most, he'd just fight them head-on. Hiss. Elder Yu took in a cold breath. He didn't think that it really was the refiner's notes. Elder Yu's plan was simple. After entering the tomb, he would use the chi-gathering pill and the medical notes as a cover to confuse these people, then secretly find the notes and put it in his pocket. Elder Yu thought that it wouldn't be a problem for an earth class like him, but after entering the tomb he realized that the danger level was beyond his imagination. He felt like he was being led by the nose by Lin Yi. These things were all found by Lin Yi. It was too difficult for him to find them himself. Elder Yu underestimated the traps in the tomb, overestimating the power that an earth class like him could unleash in the tomb. This made him regret it. If he knew this would happen, he would have told Lin Yi everything when he asked. He was still hiding it, but now he found it and didn't want to give it to him. He couldn't do anything about it. Who asked him to not ask for it? Elder Yu resisted the urge to rush over and snatch it. This was the tomb. Fighting Lin Yi wouldn't do him any good. If he wanted to leave the tomb smoothly, he might need Lin Yi's help. If he injured or killed Lin Yi, he wouldn't be able to leave. Secondly, Elder Yu's injuries weren't healed yet. If he attacked now, he might not be able to kill Lin Yi. Instead, he might get killed by Lin Yi. That wouldn't be worth it. And so, Elder Yu held back his anger and looked at Lin Yi. Kid, how about I make a deal with you? What deal? Lin Yi paused. He didn't know what kind of stupid idea Elder Yu was going to come up with. That medical notes, I don't want it anymore, you can have it. But this personal notes you have, how about you give it to me? Elder Yu said. Just take it as an exchange for my medical notes. Chapter 1391. Elder Yu, can you not say such stupid things? What use do I have for medical notes? I'll just copy it, it's the same, there's no difference. As for the notes, you didn't say you wanted it, why should I give it to you? Lin Yi looked at Elder Yu with disdain. Male thief, don't force me. Elder Yu gritted his teeth as he looked at Lin Yi. What did I force you to do? I asked you before you came here to rob the tomb for these two things, I can give them to you, are you going back on your word? Lin Yi mimicked Elder Yu's tone. Senior, don't force me. You dash. Elder Yu's mouth was wide open as he stared at Lin Yi, but he didn't have any temper. Me what? Lin Yi looked at Elder Yu faintly. I'll keep this medical notes with me first, I'll give it to you when we get out in case you run away after taking it and don't give it to me. Do what you want. Elder Yu took a deep breath, suppressing the anger in his heart. He decided not to bother with Lin Yi for now. After he recovered and left the tomb, he'd kill Lin Yi and take all the good stuff from Lin Yi. Thinking about it, he'd take the risk of getting heavily injured by Lin Yi's explosion and take the chi-gathering pill, medical notes and personal notes from Lin Yi. Even if he'd be heavily injured, Lin Yi would be heavily injured or even dead. He'd still be able to take all the pills and go back to House Yu to recover. His contribution and rewards would be limitless. From Elder Yu's point of view, as long as he could get one chi-gathering pill, the medical notes and the personal notes to the hidden House Yu, it would be a huge contribution. If he could find even one of them, it would be a worthwhile trip, let alone all three. And if he secretly kept one chi-gathering pill and some other pills, House Yu wouldn't know when he broke through to Sky Class. All the humiliation he received today would be nothing. With that thought, Elder Yu made up his mind. Male thief, you only took these things? Old Hay looked at Lin Yi, confused. He didn't understand why Lin Yi and Elder Yu were at loggerheads. There were so many good things in this tomb, why would Lin Yi want those medical notes and personal notes? He had never heard of the couple needing these things in the past. However, this wasn't something that Lao Hei could handle. Ever since he knew that Lin Yi was a mystic class master, Lao Hei didn't dare to act rashly. I'm not interested in other things for the time being. Lin Yi said faintly, don't ask what you shouldn't ask. Mind your own business. Old Black was stunned for a moment, then he nodded and laughed bitterly in his heart. What a cheap mouth of mine, what nonsense did I ask? It was obvious that Lin Yi didn't want to say any more. These things didn't have much to do with him anymore. Being able to keep his life was Old Hay's greatest fortune. He thought about Old King Old Hao and James who came with him, they were all dead. He killed two of them and one of them was eaten by a monster. After this mission, Old Hay probably wouldn't be able to stay in the business anymore. Killing Old Hao was one thing since he was a traitor, but Old Kang's death was too unjust. It would be fine if no one knew about this, but the couple and the flying sparrow girl all knew about it and he couldn't stop them from talking about it. This time Old Hay had to think about changing professions. If that's the case, then let's find a way out. Xiaoke didn't want to stay in this tomb any longer. The coffin room, are we still going? I don't want to go, there's nothing else to take. It's dangerous, let's just get out of here. Old Hay shook his head. He didn't want to cause any more trouble after all. The things I want are all on the male thief, naturally I won't go looking for death. Elder Yu humphed coldly. One of his eyes was gone and he was depressed. Then let's find an exit, we can't go back to the previous exit. Lin Yi's goal had been achieved, so it didn't matter anymore. In actuality, Lin Yi still wanted to go to the main tomb to take a look. After all, old Lin said that Zhang Liju seemed to have the ability to find treasures and elixirs. This ability might have come from some kind of treasure, but Lin Yi hadn't seen anything like that on the way here. Jiao Lao was very sensitive to treasures, and if there really was something there, Jiao Lao would have warned him, but it didn't seem like that was the case. Where's the exit? Xiaoke smiled bitterly. Right now, we can only follow this path and see what's in front of us. The group nodded, and after leaving the stone room they continued walking. This time there weren't any doors on the walls. It seemed like there were only 4 stone rooms here, and Zhang Liju's wealth wasn't that rich after all. But it was no wonder, after all, someone like Zhang Liju didn't care about money or fame, or else he wouldn't be alone his whole life without a wife or concubine. If he wanted to enjoy life, he would have had a bunch of them already and wouldn't have brought these things into the tomb. After about 300 to 400 meters they reached the end of the passageway. From the looks of it, the underground palace wasn't complicated at all, and all the complicated paths were concentrated at the entrance. What appeared in front of everyone were 2 stone doors. The 2 stone doors were very similar, but they were slightly different. On each stone door there were different patterns carved. In the middle of each stone door, there was something similar to a jigsaw puzzle like the ones in Huarong Dao's games. Where is this? Why are there 2 doors? Elder Yu saw the scene and couldn't help but ask. Elder Yu, I'm afraid this is the legendary life door and death door. Old Hei's face was solemn, but there was a hint of joy in his voice. Chapter 1392. Chapter 1390 Robbery Part 1. You don't know? What do you mean? Can't we just open them up and see? Elder Yu frowned. There's no difference between the life door and death door, but the places they lead to are different. One leads to the outside of the tomb, the other to the coffin. One leads to life, one leads to death. If you go the wrong way you won't be able to come back. Old Hei smiled bitterly. Is that so? Elder Yu paused. Then what are you waiting for? Go solve it. Well, solving it requires research. Old Hei turned to Xiaoke and Lin Yi awkwardly. Male thief, flying sparrow, what do you two think? That was just my side of the story. It's hard to say whether or not this is the life door and death door. This should be the life door and death door. Xiaoke looked at the 2 doors in front of her and sighed. We need to determine which one is the life door and which one is the death door. How do we determine? These 2 doors look the same. Old Hei nodded. I'm guessing that the key lies in the 2 puzzles on the doors. These 2 puzzles are 2 paintings, and the different paintings represent life or death. Xiaoke guessed. So you mean that after we put the puzzles together, we'll know which is the life door and which is the death door? Old Hei asked. In theory, yes, but I think that the mechanism to open the doors is the 2 puzzles as well. I can't guarantee that there won't be any danger when we put the puzzles on top of it. There's no order to the puzzles, Xiaoke said. Xiaoke said, if it's done in a certain order, then if we break the order, it'll bring serious consequences. We might cause unexpected trouble or we might destroy the mechanism forever. That's serious. Old Hei didn't quite agree with Xiaoke's words, but in this tomb, anything could happen. It didn't make sense and it scared him. Perhaps I'm just guessing. Xiaoke said. Then what should we do now? Old Hei frowned as he stared at the 2 doors. First, think of a way to write down these 2 pictures and then put them together on a piece of paper. We'll figure out which one is the life door and which one is the death door, and then we'll think of something else. Xiaoke said after a sigh. Alright, let's do that. Old Hei felt that Xiaoke's method was more dependable. Draw the 2 pictures on the paper first and figure out what they meant. That way it would be easier to determine if the door was the life or death door. Elder Yu didn't understand this, so he didn't give any suggestions. After hearing Xiaoke's words, he knew how dangerous this trap was, so he kept his mouth shut. He was an earth class, almost invincible in the outside world, but in this tomb he was so scared that he didn't even dare to breathe and he kept getting injured. It was frustrating, but at the same time he didn't dare rush Lin Yi. Lin Yi didn't care about Xiaoke and Old Hei sitting cross-legged. This time he didn't practice, but took out Zhang Liju's medical notes and started flipping through them. Lin Yi wasn't sure if he could beat Elder Yu, or if Elder Yu would have the patience to let him make a copy of the medical notes. There were a few hundred pages and it wasn't something that could be done in a short amount of time. Even making a copy would take some time, and with Elder Yu's impatient personality, Lin Yi had to give it some lead. He had to be prepared. He had made up his mind to fight for his life, but if he could find the fruit in the book, what was the point of fighting for it? Seeing that Lin Yi was flipping through Zhang Liju's medical notes, Elder Yu paused. He didn't think that Lin Yi had the ability to understand this medical notes, but he couldn't say anything to Lin Yi either. He just humphed and started healing himself. In Lin Yi's hands was Zhang Liju's medical notes, similar to old Lin's. It mainly recorded the process and methods he used to save people, including prescriptions, medicine making, medicine collection, and so on. There were also some records about the Fushi 9 needles. Of course, Lin Yi wasn't in the mood to look at these things. He was curious about the Fushi 9 needles, but he had to look for the fruit first. The medical notes didn't have a table of contents, only dates and numbers, so Lin Yi couldn't search for it. He could only flip through the pages one by one. Lin Yi's eyesight was amazing, and with Xiaoka and Old Hei's weak light, he could read the words on the medical notes. Lingshan and Yutian couldn't help, so they just sat beside Lin Yi and practiced. General Wei Wu, on the other hand, laid quietly on the side as if everything here had nothing to do with it. Time passed second by second and the tomb was silent. Only Xiaoka and Old Hei could be heard occasionally, and they were either surprised or cheering. They were experienced tomb robbers, but they weren't good at puzzles like this. The two of them had already used the paper they brought with them to draw the puzzle pieces on the stone door, and made them into pieces of the same size, planning to restore them. Songshan, on the other hand, wasn't as peaceful. A Land Rover without a license plate quietly stopped in front of a bank, and if someone looked closely, they would see that the front and back of the Rover had traces of paint patching. If Xiao Xiao were still alive, she would see that the repair marks on the Rover were exactly the same as her own. Not long after, the Land Rover's door quietly opened, and a man in black with a hood walked out. This person's figure was very well proportioned and he looked very familiar. After he got out of the car, he went straight into the bank without saying a word. Suddenly, a masked man in black broke into the bank, causing the customers in the bank to be startled and cry out in alarm. However, the masked man in black didn't seem to hear them at all. Chapter 1393. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. He was alone like a lone hero. He didn't even say a word and just barged in. The masked man in black didn't say a word. He took out a super large woven silk bag from his waist and started to put money into it from under the counter. He was self-reliant, unlike the other robbers who took hostages and asked the teller for help. He didn't say any harsh words either. It was as if he didn't care about the people around him at all, treating them like air. While everyone was stunned, almost in an instant, all the money under the counter went into the masked man's woven silk bag. The next moment, the masked man in black turned around and walked to the safe at the back. The money under the counter was limited, but the safe stored all the cash flow of the bank for a day. But what was surprising was that the masked man in black didn't ask for the safe's password and key. Instead, he just walked straight to the safe. The black-clothed masked man forcefully pulled the safe's door open. The banknotes inside once again entered the black-clothed masked man's knitted silk bag. If one bag wasn't enough, he took out another one. The way he put the money in was so fast that it was as if he had done it thousands of times. After doing all this, the masked man jumped out of the bank's counter. During this time, he didn't even say a word. Everyone present looked at this uninvited guest in fear. The whole scene happened in just a few minutes. A few of the bank's security guards reacted at this time. A few of them held their batons and looked at the silent lone hero with trepidation. "Don't move. Put down the money in your hands. We've already called the police. The police will be here soon." The security captain also felt a little guilty in his heart. This robber was too strange. He had never heard of such a robbery before. The masked man turned a deaf ear to the security captain's words and walked over. When the security captain saw that the robber wasn't listening, he clenched his teeth and waved his baton. "Everyone stop him together. Stall for time. The police will be here soon." Bang. Before the security captain could finish his words, the black-clothed masked man punched the security captain in the chest, causing him to fly out and hit the wall of the bank, making a loud sound. Looking at the security captain's chest, the black-clothed masked man had smashed his sternum. When he fell from the wall, he was gasping for air. Obviously, he was seriously injured. With the example of the security captain, the other security guards naturally did not dare to act rashly. They were all shocked in their hearts. What kind of person was this? Not only did he smash the glass of the counter and the safe with his bare hands, but he could also send a person flying with a casual punch and shatter his sternum. How could an ordinary person do that? The masked man in black didn't care what these people thought. The next moment he turned around and walked out of the jewelry store. Carrying the woven silk bag, he got on the unlicensed Land Rover parked at the entrance of the jewelry store. After the masked man in black got on the car, the Land Rover started the engine and drove away. All that was left were the alarms blaring in the bank, the terrified bank employees and the customers. The Land Rover didn't escape directly. Instead, after a few rounds in the city, it stopped in front of a jewelry store. And the masked man in black did the same thing. He directly rushed into the jewelry store and began to plunder the gold, silver, jewelry and cash. The masked man's methods were still very violent. He directly smashed the counter, the safe and the cash register. He was completely self-reliant. He didn't need anyone's help and he didn't say a word. And the security guards who rushed up to stop him were also shocked after one of them was sent flying by the masked man in black. Under the extreme helplessness and sadness of the jewelry store owner and the security guards, the masked man in black robbed everything in the jewelry store and left. The Land Rover turned a few more times and arrived at a secluded place. Then another man got out of the car. This man took out a car plate and got on the Land Rover. The car plate number was TT000. The Land Rover didn't go around the city anymore after changing the license plate. Instead, it went straight to the outskirts and after a few turns, it stopped in front of a small farm. On the surface, it looked like a farm, but in reality, Jiang Wen had bought this place and turned it into another base for him. For someone as rich as Jiang Wen, buying this place wasn't hard at all. Plus, Jiang Wen was doing this for the firewolves, so naturally the money he spent on this place would be deducted from his earnings. Master Wen, everything went smoothly. 01's robbing speed was really fast. I was only thinking of robbing a silver shop, but his speed was completely out of my expectations. He finished it in less than 5 minutes, so I decided to rob a jewelry store on my own. Master Wen, you won't blame me for being a busybody, will you? The one speaking was the man who had gotten out of the car and changed the license plate. He was called Big Scorpion, a name Jiang Wen had given him. Little Scorpion was taken in as the scapegoat, and the firewolves sent another scapegoat. Jiang Wen didn't remember his original name, but he named him Big Scorpion. It wasn't hard for the firewolves to arrange for someone like this. Although it would require quite a bit of money to settle down, it was nothing compared to the benefits that Jiang Wen could bring to the firewolves. How can I blame you for making a profit? Jiang Wen laughed. It seems like the professor's experiment was a success. You got quite a bit on your first try. How much did you get this time? This time, we went to a bigger silver shop in the business district. There's a lot of cash flow there and some foreign currency. The jewelry store is a big one as well, so it should be quite a bit. Big Scorpion didn't know how much money they got, but he had already sent someone to count it. Master Wen, I've already sent someone to count it. I think we'll get the exact numbers soon. Very good. Jiang Wen nodded. Bring 01 to the professor and let him replenish his energy and hypnotize himself. We'll do it again when this blows over. Yes. Big Scorpion nodded and left. Jiang Wen, on the other hand, started laughing happily. I'm really a genius. Not only did I earn money from this, but I can also frame Lin Yi with one stone. Ah, Lin Yi, you won't be able to defend yourself this time. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.